Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Sure, everyone, well, not everyone, a lot of people didn't see Marjorie Taylor Greene's 60 Minutes interview. I'm struggling to call it an interview. I'm looking for the right word because, well, it was bad. Leslie Stahl, what were you thinking? But America didn't tune in. And I guess that's a positive. That sends a good message, I think. The popular, 60 Minutes on Sunday nights usually, gets a good size audience. Evidently, the viewership with MTG there, 33% less than the week before, second lowest ratings this season. And I guess this is what happens when you put a fascist on. Now, there was part of me that said, if she does have this fan base or this loyal crowd that everyone believes she has, the numbers should have been through the roof, because she's kind of positioning herself to be the heir apparent when Trump goes down. And it's one of these moments where you go, I don't know what Leslie Stahl was thinking. It was one of those things where you go, Leslie, why, oh, why, oh, why? Why would you do this? These people have no shame. There's no shame here. They're going to lie. Lie. And she did. And look, you knew what was going to come out of MTG's mouth. You know what was going to come out of Marjorie Three Names' mouth. You knew. Evidently, Leslie didn't. And this is one of those things where you go, what were you thinking? Now, I think Leslie Stahl went in to that interview with the misguided belief that Marjorie Three Names has a conscience, that she's going to fess up for the things she said, that she's going to take responsibility for the things she said. No, it's all attack. And there was a point at which, Leslie Stahl actually brought that up. You're like Trump and then you attack. That's all they do. And it's the reason. And again, I've been saying this for years. It's the reason Democrats lose so always, because they're thinking about governing. They're thinking about, hey, how can we make policy that's going to make people's lives better? And that doesn't translate to a good attack line. That doesn't translate into good interviews or rhetoric. It just doesn't. And the right has been built on this kind of anger, this kind of grievance that sells. Look, she even, Marjorie Three Names even said, look, my father ran a construction company. I spent a lot of time in the car. We listened to, right-wing crazy radio. We listened to the grievance. We listened to the outrage candy. She is literally the birth child of that kind of insanity. She grew up being saturated, which is why she's so out on the fringe, and why she really understands her constituents really very well. And I'm not talking about the people who live in her district as much as the people who follow her like a blind faith religious icon. When Leslie Stahl tried to corner her on things, she blamed everybody else. Well, you said this on social media. Well, that was probably one of our SAS staffers. A lot of people are on our social media team, and she let it go. She even brought up the fact that, Marjorie Taylor Greene made her name coming out as being the first openly vocal Q kook, if you will. First QAnon supporter, wholeheartedly, all on board, all of the attacks. Everyone's a pedophile. There's a secret cabal of all this stuff going on. And she let it go with, well, I apologized. And she didn't, pursue this, which for me it would have been, so let me ask you, so if you've apologized, do you believe what the Q people have been saying? And if you don't, why is your rhetoric identical? Yeah. There was so much there that she could have gotten into, so much there that could have been front and center, but it wasn't. Now, there were a couple of things that came up. The one, for instance, Leslie Stahl asked her about, using the word pedophile. Most of us know what a pedophile is. To Republicans, that's just a slur. That's just something you call anyone who doesn't agree with you. You throw in pedophile, you throw in groomer. That's every Democrat. So, because I've had it thrown at me a number of times, because I don't think people like Marjorie Three Names and Glenn Youngkin and Republican legislatures across the country should have the ability to tell parents what they do with their children in the moment that they need something. I don't think I want zealots in between parents, the doctors, and the people who are going to take care of their children. I'm uncomfortable. And that's something true, honest, real conservatives used to agree on. And this is why I come back to this. Marjorie Three Names and that whole clan, they are not conservative. I know they love to say they are. They're not. Or maybe they're neo-conservatives. They're the new conservatives, which is basically fascists. Off on the fringe. There's free speech for everyone except people we don't agree with. The Second Amendment is good for everyone except for people we don't agree with. It's interesting to watch the rhetoric, but Leslie Stahl asked about this using the words pedophile and groomer, and how they regularly call Democrats this. Now, what's interesting? This is the interesting part. If you follow the news at all, most of the actual pedophiles come out of these zealot churches and the Republican side of the aisle. Now, it's not only them. There are people, but it seems a lot of these people who are up on the pulpit there pointing their finger down at everyone else, they seem to be the ones. Got to watch out for the kids. But anyway, she goes and she says, why is this that you're going to call Democrats, pedophiles and groomers? And she said, well, Democrats support, even Joe Biden, the president himself, supports children being sexualized and having transgender surgeries. Sexualizing children is what pedophiles do. And Leslie Stahl goes, wow, okay. But my question really is, and I'm going, wait a second, your question really is something else? And she goes, can't you fight for what you believe in without all the name calling, without personal attacks? And you go, whoa, you missed an enormous part of that statement, which is that anyone who disagrees with her is a pedophile or a groomer. Now, they've taken all of the gender-affirming care, which I don't understand all of it, but I know it's not all surgeries. I know it's not all that stuff, which even I have a problem with as for kids. But she's lumped all of that into the groomer pedophile world. And Leslie Stahl did not push back. In fact, what we got is, wow, okay. But my question really is, my question really is do you know what a pedophile is, and why do you surround yourself with people who have done these things? But again, I look at what 60 Minutes did, and I'm frustrated with it. They're normalizing this kind of crazy behavior. By giving this person a platform, they are normalizing this kind of insanity with the both sides-ism. Oh, can't we just get along? Do you have to use this inflammatory rhetoric? Yes, because that's what riles the base. That's the outrage candy that gets them, going to the polls, donating money, attacking Democrats. This is how we can't get anything done. And look, this is not just her. There's a lot of moneyed interests who are doing as much as they can do to normalize the kind of insanity that is ripping us apart. And no talk of unity, except by, very interesting, and this is one of these bizarre kind of things that makes me go, there's a new group. They're not new, but they've been around for a while. But they got $70 million evidently. No labels. They want to have an effort to get no labels candidates on the presidential circuit, a Democrat and a Republican. So we're gonna have a mixed thing. And I said, wow, it sounds great. Like a lot of neoconservative nonsense. Sounds okay on paper. Believe in freedom, believe in liberty and free speech until you try and use any of those things. And in their world, if you don't agree in lockstep with them, you're completely ostracized. Well, the no labels people, it sounds great. Sounds great. No labels. We're gonna find common sense until you start coming down to what that means. What that means is we're gonna do all the things that Republicans have been wanting to do for years and just calling it bipartisanship. All the things that Democrats have agreed with Republicans on, like ending welfare as we know it, only to find out it's made things worse. Loosening control of media so that a handful of companies can now control virtually everything we see, hear, and read. It's made things worse. Ultimately, all of these schemes comes back to you and me. It comes back to us. Finding that common ground. Talking to each other once again. And as long as we're being pushed around by the Marjorie Three-Name crowd, by all of the Trump show that's coming, I don't know that we're going to get there, which is why I keep saying I don't think Trump's going to see a day in jail. I want him to be the Republican nominee, and I hope he is defeated soundly at the ballot box. It's the only way this country moves forward. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So a special shout out to our newest affiliate, KTRC in Santa Fe, New Mexico, listening on AM 1260 and FM 103.7. Looking forward to a long, happy, prosperous future in Santa Fe. Want to hear your thoughts. Also, you can email me too, rick@thericksmithshow.com. And thanks to the good folks there at KTRC for bringing us on board. Looking forward to that. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line one. Alice, how we doing?
Totally insane as usual. It's in the air. Well, I've got a couple of things to say. Number one, I didn't watch stupid Marjorie Taylor twit face.
I had to.
I did not. Of course, I've heard enough about it and read the cliff notes, I suppose you want to call it that. But I'm really disgusted that the mainstream media is taking these whack jobs, and let's face it, they're whack jobs, and giving them a platform to spread their lies and hate and propaganda.
Yep.
And like you, if you start going down through all the headlines, it's an evangelical minister, it's a Republican, whatever or whatnot. I mean, last year I could, without even Googling it, come up with 6 of them right off the bat. And personal note aside, over the weekend, no, actually it was on Friday, someone hacked into my Facebook account. And what really made it weird was it was a combination of factors. They could not break into my password. But for some reason, my internet provider, who my email is through, it got hacked into, which caused my email to be open apparently for anybody. So they used that to get the account recovery and all this. Well, they couldn't change my password on that or anything else, because to do that, you have to know my personal info and call into the internet provider.
Right.
But they left all the receipts. So anyways, long and the short of it was I got my account back, and lo and behold, who did it? Some whack job Republican evangelical minister in Florida and his little sidekick, because they left all the receipts on my email.
Because they need money. Crazy.
Yeah, and that's what they were doing.
Sure.
They had set up a political ad to boot, opened up a campaign, ad campaign thing on my account, which, again, left the receipts. So I had to contact Facebook and tell them, I didn't do this. You just gave me back my thing. I uploaded my ID to prove I was me, because I don't care. I'm not losing my Facebook account to some idiots. And and they're still trying to get in. So
No,
I'm like,
there's big money to be made in this. I've had a couple of friends who've gotten hacked. I mean, if the thing is if you're dumb enough to give them money, I don't know what to tell you. But
I know.
If for any of my friends out there, if you get an email from me going, "Hey, I need money," no, that's not me. That's simple. But I appreciate the thoughts, Alice.
Have a good one, Rick.
Thanks so much. Look, at the end of this, there's so much scamming going on out there. It's ridiculous. And some of it coming right from the grand old party. The fact that did you see Trump doing the whole spiel? I don't need your money. He put out a video saying, I don't need money. He says it's very simple. They can't buy me and they can't control me, and that scares them beyond belief. And then proceeds to ask them for money. I don't need your money, but send it anyway. Quite remarkable. Now, what we know is over the first 24 hours after his indictment, he raised $4 million. The 24 hours after that, he raised another $1 million. He's raised $5 million because of the indictment. And look, this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, I know that the Trump base, they're all on board. You saw in Florida, they were waving flags on the side of the road as he was going to go to New York. And there's going to be a big, I guess, to-do Tuesday night in Florida. Okay. You find that the most recent poll, by the most recent Morning Consult poll, has Trump got 55% of the Republican primary voters. That's an increase of 3% from just last week. He's 29 points over Ron DeSantis. It's looking like at this point, unless the evidence is shown and is out in front, could be our guy. Now, what we know is he's going to be charged with 34 felony counts, not going to be handcuffed or photographed. And I don't know whether that's a smart thing or a dumb thing to not have the mugshot. I said from the beginning, if he was going to be mugshot, he was going to Tom DeLay it up with a big cheesy smile or some thumbs up stuff. I expected that. No, they're not going to be a mugshot. Now, I have a lot of people who are sending me mock-ups of mugshots, which are very interesting, but he's not going to wear the orange jumpsuit. None of that's going to happen. He's going to be in, he's going to be out, he's going to get back on the plane and go back to Florida. And then what they're going to do is they're going to do what they're saying they're going to do. This is going to be Trump. He's already vowed to escalate the attacks on Alvin Bragg. They're going to spend time after time, day after day, attacking the Manhattan district attorney. They're going to attack the case. They're going to go after this as aggressively as they can. And I'm okay with that. I said, look, you keep talking. There's talk that the judge may put a gag order on him. If I'm Alvin Bragg, if I'm the prosecutor, I'm saying if you put a gag order on him, I'm going to fight the gag order. Because I want him talking. I want him out there, spewing nonsense. I want him saying the things that he wants to say. And I want him to be angry doing it. Because we know he's going to rile the base. We know he's going to call for more violence. We know there's already that kind of push. Even though the police in New York and the folks who pay attention to this stuff say that the chatter that we heard before January 6th, and I remember talking about going, look, I don't know how many bodies are going to be stacked up on the streets, but the chatter is lots of violence before January 6th. None of that right now. Now, that could be the chilling effect of, well, they're prepared for us this time, and New York actually does know how to take care of mass crowds. Could be all of that. Or it could be that just, very few people give a damn. And, the reality is the polling out on this, 60% of Americans approve of the indictment, as we know now. That's not knowing what the 34 felony counts are going to be. Now, the weird thing is, at least for me, I look at this and, I remember back in 2015 talking about all of the irregularities that he'd been accused of for years. There's nothing new here. This is who Trump has always been. The only thing that's different is somebody actually took it to a grand jury. So this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. 34 felonies. And I want him talking. I want him talking on this case. Now, what we're also finding out is on the classified documents case. And I said from the beginning, I think the people who turned him in were the Secret Service. I thought it was the people who were surrounding him who happened to go, wait a second, that's not right. We can't have that. What we're finding out now is, well, there are a number of federal agents, number of Secret Service agents who are set to testify in the classified documents investigation. That's interesting. And according to Brett Baer, the guy over at Fox News, it's multiple agents, not just one whistleblower. It's multiple agents. So everyone, worried about Jack Smith not going fast enough. I'm pretty thrilled Jack Smith is on this. I think it's the right thing to do, and I think that's the case. I think he should really get in trouble for. But here's the thing. Again, back to I want him to keep talking. If you remember the interview he did with Hannity, I guess a week ago or so. Hannity's trying to steer him away from what he was saying, which was, that he has the right. He has the right to do whatever he wants. Hannity said, I've known you for decades. I can't imagine you ever saying, bring me some of the boxes that we brought back from the White House. I'd like to look at them. Did you ever do that? Which is a dumb question. Anybody whose job is to ask questions should know the answer. And Trump answered, I would have the right to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Yes, there is. But Hannity goes, but I know you, and I don't think you would do it. Still trying to reel him back into safe waters. But no, he wasn't going there. He says he'd have the right to do it. He would do it. And it's just one of those things where he's going to double down. At some point, they're going to spin the hush money because it's already happening. The fake news people are saying, no, this wasn't about election. This was hush money because I know people who believe there was no hush money. I know people who believe it's all made up. Trump did nothing. No, Fox isn't even saying that. Fox is saying the hush money was paid to save the embarrassment for Melania, so that his wife wouldn't find out, which, makes sense, but also so voters wouldn't find out. You can do both. And when your lawyers are going to jail and your accountants are going to jail, I got to tell you, you might be next. He's never going to spend a day in jail, but it's going to be interesting. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day over 1,000 auto workers at the Ford assembly plant in Kansas City, Missouri, began their occupation. The sit-down was the first strike by the UAW against Ford. UAW President Homer Martin vowed to organize the entire company. The strike had been called the previous evening, when workers learned 350 of their coworkers had been laid off at the end of the day's shift. They demanded reinstatement, higher wages, better working conditions, and recognition of their union. The workers spent a good part of the early morning hours welding the gates shut to the railroad yards and parking lots surrounding the plant. Then they selected an 18-man committee to direct the strike. One leader, O.W. Penny, stated, quote, "When the company forced the strike on us by unfairly laying off men because of their union membership, Some with 12 years on the job. Everybody joined up with us. We signed 200 outside the plant, and they're signing others inside. Penny added, the pay here is not as good as at either Chevrolet or Chrysler plants. The boys there have better sanitary facilities and a cafeteria, while we have to eat our lunches sitting on the floor. Strikers lowered a banner from the top floor of the plant that read, Lincoln freed the slaves, Ford brought them back. Ford insisted he would never allow his plants to be organized, but company representatives spent the weekend negotiating a settlement with the UAW to rescind the layoffs. By Monday, April 5th, the workers were back on the line. Strike authorizations would flare up just 2 weeks later when Penny and another UAW organizer were beaten at the hands of company thugs. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
With new outrages erupting every day, I find some comfort in knowing that we the people have at least eliminated certain particularly ugly plutocratic abuses. Child labor, for example. Well, outlawed, yes. Stopped, no. Recent reports reveal that thousands of children ages 12 to 17 are toiling illegally at dangerous jobs in manufacturing, construction, food processing, etc. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with teenagers working. They might need to help their families, gain experience, or just earn a few bucks. Indeed, I worked part-time throughout my high school and college years, and while I did gripe some, overall, it was positive. So this is not about children working. It's about corporate child abuse, plain and simple. For example, last year, Packers Sanitation Services was caught, quote, employing oppressive child labor in meatpacking plants to clean saws, head splitters, and other butchering machines. In a typical incident, one 13-year-old was badly burned by the caustic cleaning chemicals they used during long night shifts, which ran from 11 p.m. to at least 5 a.m. Once caught, top executives of Packers Sanitation tried to sanitize their reputation by proclaiming that they have, quote, zero tolerance for any violation of child labor laws. Oh? Ask that 13-year-old. Yet, our worker protection laws are so weak that Packers' multiple violations resulted in a fine of $1.5 million. That's not even peanuts for this nationwide giant, which is owned by Blackstone, a Wall Street huckster whose executives pretend they know nothing about the children they endanger for profit. This is Jim Hightower saying, how about we make a few of the children and grandchildren of Blackstone profiteers work some midnight shifts cleaning meat-cutting machinery? I'm guessing they would stop the abuse overnight.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently Twitter has not removed all of the blue check marks yet, except for the New York Times. Evidently got around to doing them. But I woke up today and I go, well, let's see if they removed mine. And I've never put any real, any real, effort behind having the coveted blue mark. But I went and they changed the language. As the day before it said, this is a legacy account and all this stuff. Now it's either or. So no one knows who's paying yet. And as I've said, I am not paying Elon Musk a dime, not a single dime ever. And to me, it's interesting that they've chosen this route. So we'll see where it goes, because there's part of me that goes, look, we're going to be the people who are paying are going to pay for the folks who aren't, but it's going to look like a lot of people are paying. It's all in the display. But if you remember last week, we talked about this open source algorithm. And again, I'm not a computer guy, but it seemed interesting to me why Elon and Twitter would go, oh, we're going to make everything transparent. And my thought went, I don't know. There are a lot of smart people out there who could do a lot of mischief. And that's why I've asked Craig Johnson to come talk with us. Craig is the president and managing partner of Unfiltered Media. They've got a Substack page, unfilteredmedia.substack.com. We'll get links out on social media. I can take a look at that. They've got a new piece out on just this, the effects of open sourcing your algorithm. Craig, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
So, this open source thing. Look, I'm not a computer guy. I don't know much about it. I know the algorithm is terrible and it's going to get worse because my feed is full of nothing but crazy people who I don't follow and I can't stand. But what is this going to do? I mean, for those of us, and again, dumb this down for us at the bottom here who don't quite understand how this all works. What's this going to mean?
Sure. So basically what happened on March 31st, Twitter open sourced their algorithm. Basically, it is the black box that decides who gets to see your content. And by doing so, roughly, they've given all of the social media professionals, such as myself and the left, the right, anti-union, pro-union activists, the blueprint to basically manipulate what America sees online, regardless of whether or not they're popular or not. Open sourcing this basically algorithm is going to open up the floodgates even more. Because while we had hints before on what to do, we didn't know for sure. But now we know for sure because they told us exactly how effective each action we take online is to spreading whatever message we want, regardless of whether or not it's representative of the American public or not.
And this is the thing that bothers me because, social media, most people think of, my friends are going to see this, the people who follow me are going to see it. And if it's popular because people are looking at it, then it'll get around as my friends share it, that there's this kind of group sourcing, but that's not really at all what goes on behind the machine.
It's not. What goes on behind the machine are a bunch of coordinated groups who get on a call, multiple meetings every week, and they essentially agree to do a set of actions that they know will artificially spread their message to as many people as possible, trying to dominate the story. Every single day you can look at the Twitter trending hashtag list, and you could basically, if you're in the business, pick out which ones were definitely astroturfed or not.
And, again, I come back to this because, people go to social media and they think that this is, like the temperature of the country and the temperature of voters, when the reality is a good number of these folks are bots. A good number of it is, as you said, these kind of these farming operations that operate in a way to try and influence how these algorithms work. Is what Musk is doing, is this going to make things, he says this transparency is going to open things up and make it better. Do you see that happening, or as I do you think it's going to get worse?
I agree with you. I think it's going to get worse because the one thing keeping professionals like me back was the opaqueness, the black boxness. We couldn't really know what the rules were. But now that we really know the rules, all of that kind of grass tops, astroturfing, fake kind of motivating of a narrative online is just going to get more efficient, more effective, because we know exactly what the rules are. And I think a lot of people underestimate the kind of carry-on effect from this as well, because if Twitter's designed this way, this algorithm is designed this way, you can bet that the other social media platforms are also designed a similar way, mainly because the developers are sharing similar technology. If you look at the kind of basis of the Twitter algorithm, it actually comes from the Google search algorithm. It's based off of this idea that you can generally trust the trustworthiness of a tweet based off of those people who are associated with it. So Google works by in very simple terms, essentially how good the links to a web page are from other web pages determines its ranking. And so if you know one, you start to know everybody. So this is going to apply to Facebook. This applies to TikTok. This applies to Instagram. And it comes with the same pluses and minuses. Like Twitter, for example, one of the interesting things about knowing their algorithm was that they're blocking Ukraine content. They're basically censoring any kind, pro and anti. There is no dissemination or discrimination between either one. It's just a tag in there. You can see it in the code.
But I thought this was about free speech. I thought Elon said this was about free speech, and this was opening up free speech to everyone.
Yeah, Elon's a hypocrite, and I never believed him. Never believed billionaires, in my opinion.
No, you never trust a billionaire. But the thing is because I've had a bunch of people go, well, this is going to open it up and make speech freer, and I'm going, no, it's not free. I got to pay $8 or $9 to get the little blue check mark that I'm never paying for, never a dime to Elon Musk. But right from the start, he's saying, yeah, if you pay me this monthly fee, your comments will get to the top of the article. You'll get more push. That doesn't sound free to me.
It's not, and it's in the code. You can see exactly the effect that paying has, and it's ridiculous because all I see it is diminishing people of color, unionists, organizers' voices, because you're essentially just always going to be competing with more moneyed, well-resourced, well-organized people creating grass tops, not real narrative pushing efforts.
Now, again, I think a lot of people think the internet is like the Wild West. And there's part of me that goes, I don't know that it would be bad if it were the Wild West. This sounds like it's the Wild West with a giant army on one side and a kid with a slingshot on the other.
It's like Standard Oil. It's like back in the 19th century when it was the Wild Wild West, but there's Standard Oil who's just putting their thumb on the scale. And it's not actually wild at all. It's just Elon Musk's playground now.
Much better analogy. That's why you're the expert on this. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Craig Johnson. Craig is the president and managing partner over at Unfiltered Media. You can check out their Substack page, unfilteredmedia.substack.com. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that if you can see it. Because again, not paying the $8. But you said something here that's been on my mind for a while because there's talk of banning TikTok, which I'm against the idea of banning TikTok if you're going to leave all the other ones. Because I think they're all just as bad in my view. Is that somewhere in the ballpark, or does TikTok rise to a significantly higher level because of the Chinese Communist government?
Well, I'm 100% with you. I do think that there is a defining characteristic that it is. ByteDance is a Chinese state-owned company, and they certainly are stealing our data, but they're stealing our data in so many other facets of our life, which sort of makes that special, but it's Chinese owned, kind of a hollow critique, because we're all using Chinese sourced parts. Every single iPhone has a Chinese sourced processor in it that could be stealing our, data, or likely is stealing our data. And so, no, we have a fundamental problem with social media, and that it is horrific for us. 1 in 4 young women have considered suicide because of social media, and it's rotting our society at the core. So I think any critique that can be leveled against TikTok and its desire to ban it can be leveled against the other ones. And it's always this double-edged sword, because never at this time has people of color and communities of color been able to get around the publishing monopoly of white-owned businesses before, but also at the same time, you're also seeing it as such a distortion of reality that we're losing touch and cohesiveness as a society because of it.
No, there's something wrong here. But the reason I bring up the TikTok thing is because the way the Chinese Communist government does it, I guess, in China, and again, not having been there, this is what I'm told, is they've used the algorithm in a different way, for younger people, for educational stuff, for STEM education, for stuff that I go, that's not bad. As where they're poisoning our children's mind with idiotic cat videos and worse, these moronic challenges that we see. I think it's how you use it as well, and we've completely allowed this to not be regulated. And this idea of the Wild West, but to use your analogy, with Standard Oil on one side.
Exactly, it's a completely different product in China, and it's a much better product. It's a more cohesive product, it's a more useful product, and they are absolutely intentionally doing it, poisoning our minds.
Is there any way legislatively, because I know we love to misinterpret the First Amendment. We've got free speech rights. Yes, between you and your government, you have absolute free speech rights, but you don't have free speech rights between you and me or individuals. And is there any way to undo what we've done? Any way to put this genie back in the bottle? Any way to legislate this in a way that isn't being used against we the people?
Yeah, there are a bunch of ways, and I would really encourage. I work with a group called the Tech Oversight Project, which has a bunch of ideas about this in particular. But My particular idea is you actually do a modified Section 230. So, like the Section 230 for everybody is just essentially what excuses online platforms from being liable for the content they produce. So, the white supremacist manifesto that causes the deaths of 7 people, they're not liable for it. And Section 230 is what protects them. If we were to modify this and actually hold them accountable to moderate the content that is available for people to see on the public sphere, I absolutely do think that that option is there, and people are looking at smart legislation that accomplishes that goal, where you get the good parts of the innovation of the Section 230 allowed, which is allowing internet platforms like YouTube and Facebook and the benefits that they bring to exist, but also holding them accountable for the fact that their algorithms are essentially Nazi creation machines.
No, and you said that, and I absolutely agree, because looking at my feed, because everything that they've created a Twitter the things that they want me to see, and they keep pushing me to what they want me to see, which is exactly the most heated rhetoric, the biggest doses of outrage candy, and people being the worst versions of themselves, and it only goes down from there. So for me, if there's a way to moderate some of that, I'm not talking about limiting what people can say. Just, I don't know, be a better version of yourself. Is there a way to get to that, or is this just one of those things where you go, "No, it's a pipe dream. The genie's out of the bottle. We need a civil war to solve all this"?
Well, I think I don't think so. I think there is a way to do it. Mainly because as someone whose dad worked at Intel and was on the internet since the early 90s, way before 56K modems existed, for all those people who remember those. It used to be way worse. It used to actually be way worse than this back on the early web, where the N-word was way more common.
Yeah, but it was much more limited. I mean, you only had a handful of people who were involved. We're talking, in this country, everyone's attached to the internet in one way or another.
Sure, in that regard, yes, but that still gives me hope to see that there has been at least some modicum of progress in the social standards that we accept online, that we can get further. And I do think that eventually, because anti-big tech sentiment is generally bipartisan, that we can get somewhere with that. I do actually think that it's a relatively bipartisan issue that could be and is going to be legislated on in the next few years.
That is the hope. And what can people do? I mean, we try and moderate what our kids see, but good luck on that. With the access that everyone has and the ease of access. As a parent, it's difficult to moderate and to see what they're paying attention to, because they're smart enough to delete their history. Any advice for parents? Any advice for folks who are trying to? Because look, I'm expecting the next couple of weeks, especially because I use Twitter a lot. I am expecting it to get much uglier than it's already been, as this algorithm takes on and keeps feeding this kind of outrage. So I'm trying to get to a point where people don't lose their minds and things don't get much worse. Does that make sense?
Yeah. If I had my recommendation for parents at this point, is what my parents did to me, and is for every hour of screen time that I got, I had to practice my musical instrument, and I played tuba at the time, for the same amount of time. So it didn't limit my access, but made me do something in the real life for an equal amount of time that essentially grounded me to something that wasn't online, wasn't completely devoted to that screen. And I thought that was, in retrospect, really, really wise of them.
That's not a bad idea. Good stuff. Craig, I appreciate you taking a little time for us. I hope you'll come back and share some more. This is not going to go away. So I'd love to have you come back and talk to us again.
No problem. Thank you.
Good stuff. Craig Johnson. He is the president and founder of Unfiltered Media, unfilteredmedia.substack.com, the website. We'll get links out on social media. I can take a look at that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1968. That was the night that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his now famous "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech at the Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee. He was speaking in support of striking sanitation workers who were members of AFSCME Local 1733. During his speech, he said, "Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't really matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've been to the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." The next day, Dr. King was murdered by an assassin's bullet at the Lorraine Motel. In 2015, AFSCME President Lee Saunders wrote about the importance of remembering Dr. King's legacy to today's labor movement. Let's honor Dr. King by taking a page out of his playbook. Let's give workers the power to reshape our struggling economy and improve the lives of all Americans by negotiating better wages and benefits. Yes, unions are still the answer, the path to the middle class, for every American and not just African Americans. We follow Dr. King's path. We pursue his dream by organizing. It is the way forward for our union and the nation. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So McDonald's. Evidently, McDonald's has closed down a couple of days. This is the most recent report coming out by the AP. They've closed down some of their U.S. offices because, well, evidently they're preparing to lay off a bunch of people. And this is one of those things where I allowed myself to go read the comments. And when the headquarters of McDonald's shuts down, globally for a couple of days because there's going to be a bunch of layoffs, because understand, McDonald's employs like 150,000 people across the globe. 70% of those are based outside of the U.S. So they're closing down, going to decide which way they're going to go. And it was one of these things where I started thinking about, who are we talking about? So I'm reading through the comments section, and the comments are like, yeah, that's all these fast food workers demanding, $15 an hour. It's all these fast food workers who want health care. It's all these greedy fast food workers who don't. And you go, wait a second. This isn't how this works. Understand, the people who close down are not the people who are giving you your bag of fries out the window. These are not the people flipping the burgers or doing any of the jobs that you come in contact with. Globally, these are all of the people who work in the corporate offices, the salespeople, the people who are designing stuff. These are the upper echelon of McDonald's jobs. These are the ones who people actually work for McDonald's Corporation. The vast majority of the McDonald's that you and I go to are owned by people locally who franchise those from the big behemoth. And then they are the ones who hire and fire and abuse and do all the things that they have done over the years. But I found it interesting that when you looked at the comments all were, it's the workers' fault. Across the board, there were no comments that I could find, and I read probably about 100 of them. There was none that said, could this be AI? Could this be the technology coming online and they're doing away with, departments and bringing, automated technology on board? Because, and this is the part that blew my mind, that wasn't even mentioned in the comments of doing away with the people who work in the stores that you go to. There are already fully automated stores. There are already places where you go and you push the buttons and it comes out like a vending machine. That wasn't even brought up here. And the reason I bring this up is, I was just listening to a guy the other day who was talking about, when technology comes fully on board, we're in a major chaotic moment. And this is why I keep saying, look at all the nonsense they're throwing at us. All of the divisive stuff about, about who identifies as what, or who goes to what bathroom, or who loves who, or who marries who, or any of this stuff that really, on the grand scheme of things, in your personal life, unless you are in that community, doesn't mean anything to you. That's to keep you from thinking about what's coming. And our government has done nothing, literally nothing, to prepare this country, or the globe for that, or any government really, for what is coming, the onslaught of job losses that are coming because of AI. They were saying in the next 15 years, between 40 and 50% of the work that we do right now, me right here sitting in this chair, could be done by an AI talk show host. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why they claim that's not going to happen right away, but down the road, they're already using for research, because evidently the chat GPS thing does a much better job of researching than most of us do. The technology of the future is going to be devastating. And this is where, again, nobody politically is talking about this, because we're still worried about Marjorie Three Names, and we're still worried about Donald Trump and his crimes. I want to talk about what the future of work looks like in this country. How are people going to put food on their table? How are they going to make sure that we survive as a society? And again, I'm looking through these comments, which I don't do often, because a lot of it just devolves into people being the worst versions of themselves. But this one caught my attention because of where they place the blame. Almost no blame at the top. There were a handful of spattering of comments of people, greedy CEOs, bet you they're not going to take a pay cut. And you go, of course not. They're not going to. But I find it interesting how we working people all tend to blame ourselves when these things happen. Immediately, it's because the workers demanded too much. And it's the same thing we heard when deindustrialization really took grip of this country. The Reagan years forward, as we were just sending manufacturing out of this country in incredible rates. It's the union's fault. You've heard that a lot. It's the unions, they asked for too much. They asked for health care. They asked for retirement security. They asked for some security in their job. They asked for some say in where they spend more than a third of their lives. They wanted to take a vacation. They wanted a day off. I know, it's too much to ask for. And we've internalized this. We as a working class have kind of bought into it. I can't tell you how many working people I've run into. Well, maybe we did ask for too much, and no, you can't compete with the Chinese workers who are making pennies an hour with deplorable working conditions, lax environmental rules, and a Chinese communist government who's giving huge amounts of money away. You were never going to be able to compete with that. Never. And I love the rhetoric, American workers can compete with anybody. No, they can't. Not when you're talking about 100 to 1. And we have to have policies and policy makers who understand that. We need to have people who are going to step forward and say, you know what? No. I look at the Tucker Carlson clip that someone sent me a couple of weeks ago of him saying, I wouldn't let any automated trucks on the road. Well, stop it dead in its tracks. And why? Because that's the number one job for high school educated males. If you take that away, you're just chaos. And at some point, we as a country have to start going, you know what? We need to rein in this technology a little bit. And I'm not saying crush the machines. I'm not a Luddite. But either we're going to figure out how we socialize the benefits, and we know that's never going to happen, or we got to slow down the machine a little bit. But I do want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, by all means, I want to hear it. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. And again, shout out to our friends at KTRC in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Thanks for being here, and thanks for tuning in. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
Of trickle-down fantasy that just will not make life easier for everyday Americans.
House Republicans race to pass fossil-fueled energy bill. New studies warn extreme floods and droughts are getting worse due to global warming. Plus, renewables surpass coal for electricity generation in the U.S. for the first time in history.
All of that history-making news and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
When you have a cloudy, windless day, you have to have power. This building is powered by natural gas.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the gentleman says that this building is powered by natural gas. I think it's probably more accurate to say it's powered by hot air.
Oh, snap, Congressman James McGovern of Massachusetts. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, sounds like it was a fun day in the U.S. House.
It was entertaining for sure.
Uh-huh.
But first, a heads up. In the wake of that massive, deadly tornado that destroyed the town of Rolling Fork, Mississippi this week, the National Weather Service is warning of a new series of severe storms and likely tornadoes that will hit the Midwest and South in coming weeks. So get prepared.
Yes, please.
But an ominous new study from the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society projects that the U.S. will see more frequent, deadly supercell storms, the largest, most intense storms, as the planet warms. The study finds supercell storms will stay on the ground longer and move eastward to southern states where there are more people, much more poverty, and more vulnerable housing.
Sounds like you're describing exactly what hit Rolling Fork.
The researchers said exactly that. The tornado that hit Rolling Fork fits the projected pattern. And by 2100, towns like Rolling Fork could see a supercell storm every year. A different study has confirmed that, yes, floods and droughts worldwide are getting worse due to burning fossil fuels and other human activities that release greenhouse gases. The researchers found the intensity of extreme drought and rainfall has sharply increased over the past 20 years, with a surge in extreme dryness and wetness starting in 2019, leading to crop failure, infrastructure damage, and humanitarian crises and conflict. They warn the strong link between climate extremes and rising global temperatures means continued global warming will trigger drought and rainstorms that are more frequent, more severe, and last longer.
You know, if we just stopped reading all these reports, I'm sure everything would be fine.
Hey, but the Republican House majority is working hard to make climate impacts as bad as possible.
Speaking of not reading scientific reports,
Hill Heat reports that the new energy bill from Republicans is an omnibus of giveaways to extractive industries. It expands and speeds up oil and gas leasing, repeals incentives for electrification, weakens water and air pollution rules, eliminates controls on the export and import of liquefied natural gas, and much more under the guise of lowering energy prices. Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York slammed the bill, which Democrats are calling the Polluters Over People Act.
This is not a problem of supply. It is a problem of greed and abuse of market power. It's almost as if you gave a pen to an oil lobbyist and wrote down everything that they'd want. Much of that was in this bill. We are looking at reducing big oil's royalty rates to the public.
I think it wasn't as if they gave a pen to big oil and let them write down whatever they want. I'm sure that's exactly what happened, and now they're racing the clock to try to get it done. We should make clear that this is the U.S. House. No matter what passes here, it ain't going anywhere beyond that.
Yes, Republicans know the White House will veto it, but they want to pass it now in order to be able to blame Biden when gas prices routinely rise in the summer driving season.
As if the prices would come down if they drilled for more oil?
It wouldn't. Energy analysts say it is unlikely that the GOP energy package would lower any energy prices.
Well, why let facts and stuff stop them?
Also, a new poll shows that the vast majority of Americans want the government to address climate change, finding that nearly 3/4 of all Americans say it is important for the United States to mitigate the effects of climate change, and that includes 61% of Republicans. Good news, European Union countries gave final approval this week to a landmark law to ban sales of new internal combustion engine cars by 2035. But that was only after Germany held out for an exemption for cars running on so-called carbon-neutral fuels like hydrogen. Finally, great news for breathers. Electricity generated from renewables has surpassed coal in the United States for the first time ever last year.
Really?
That's according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Renewable electricity also surpassed nuclear generation in 2022.
Wow. Well, that is some good news. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Tuesday is going to be a interesting day. I guess that's one way of putting it. It's going to be a huge day. We could use the huge part of that all across the nation, not just in New York, where that's going to be the center of things, I think, because obviously you don't have an ex-president indicted and arraigned very often or ever. So this is going to get a lot of the attention, going to suck a lot of the oxygen out of the room. But we've also got the election for Supreme Court and a Senate seat in Wisconsin that could have major implications for that state, and also Chicago. You got the big mayoral coming up, so going to be interesting to see how those play out. But clearly, what's going to suck the oxygen out of the room is going to be Trump. And here to share some thoughts on all of that, I've asked my good friend Bill Scheer to come talk with us. Bill's a political writer for the Washington Monthly. You can check out his work there. Bill, thanks for taking time for us.
Always a pleasure to talk to you.
So let's start with Trump. I might as well go there since the Trump show is now back. Ratings, I guess, are fairly high. What are we expecting?
I'm expecting, I think, what everybody else is expecting. You know, a lot of circus, a lot of spectacle, a lot of bloviating. But at the end of the day, he's going to get indicted. We'll see the specifics of the indictment. People will say whether they think it's a strong case or a weak case, depending on their pre-cooked biases. But we can't actually know how well the case is going to go because this is also unprecedented. We've never had a former president go on trial like this.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, now I got to think I personally think it's probably going to be a fairly weak case. And the reason I say this is because I don't know that Trump would have been pushing for the indictment to come, and try to set the timeline. I got this feeling they're going to try and push this as fast as they can because they believe this is going to be the weakest of all of the other ones that I think are coming.
I mean, certainly the other ones, presumably around the corner, are more grave. When you're talking about actually being charged for stealing an election or not handling highly sensitive classified documents, though you can make an argument that the Stormy Daniels case is about trying to hide money used to win an election by covering up the truth. And if this had come out, I mean, what's weird about the cases, of course, is that Stormy Daniels had already gone public about this affair years prior before Trump ever ran for president, but it wasn't widely known. And if she had done a fresh interview, perhaps it would have gotten more coverage, would have hurt him with evangelicals in the run-up to the election. Who knows? But that's in that respect. This is why campaign finance money is supposed to be above board, not be hidden, so everybody knows where your money is coming from, what it's being spent on.
Yeah.
So you make the case that it's more serious than it seems at first blush. But the strength of the case, I mean, I just can't know, and it's even hard to know just from the indictment itself, because any allegations to be proven in court, and the ability for a former president to get a fair trial will obviously be heavily debated. But part of me has to think if you're the Manhattan DA, you wouldn't take it this far unless you felt pretty good about it, because to lose a case like this would be highly embarrassing for you.
No, and this is why my mind goes into this place, because again, we haven't seen it, and I'm waiting to see it, and I'm waiting to get some some of the analysis on it. But in my mind, I'm going, if I'm Trump and I think it's a weak case, I'm going to do just what he did: try and set the timetable on what I want, and to push them in a direction, and really kind of hammer on it, so that if you do win it, well, that just makes everything else look like a witch hunt, as they've been trying to frame this, because that seems to be the play. Or do you have a different idea?
Well, I'm at this point not one to presume that Trump thinks all that strategically or logically. It's
okay. Maybe I do give him too much credit.
I think he has always been a maximum narcissist. He does almost everything to maintain his ability to be in the spotlight, but also to be a cult of personality for his most loyal followers. And that requires never apologizing, never conceding, always pushing the boundaries of the law, and assuming that you can always find a way to eventually get away with it through delay and distraction. And intimidation. And obviously these things have gotten him pretty far in life, but there's always the risk that you play that card one too many times, it's going to catch up with you. So I don't know if he's being strategic and thinking that he really has a good hand to play, or if he's just living in the moment like he always does, and this is gonna end up being one risky play too many for him.
Yeah. Any chance the judge puts a gag order on him?
There's always a chance. This is all so unprecedented, and I don't know a lot about this judge, what his general attitude is about things, and if he had a certain record, a certain pattern of behavior before this, would it apply in this case? It's all so new and also unusual that kind of stuff. I feel like you just have to wait and see.
Yeah, no, so I'm of the mindset if I'm the prosecution and the judge does that, I'm fighting the gag order, because I want Trump out there. I want him talking about this all the time. I want him digging his own grave.
Well, look, he is already a very unpopular figure, generally speaking. He may be closer in the presidential trial than you and I would like. The last average I saw was Biden 48, Trump 46. That's pretty close. But it's also kind of where he's always been. He's always been around the mid-40s, and that was just barely enough to win in 2016 in a couple of fluky close states, but it wasn't enough for him to hold the House in 2018. It wasn't enough to hold the presidency in 2020, let alone the Senate, and it wasn't enough for the Republicans to have a good midterm in 2022. So on the whole, he's someone who is not terribly popular. The people who have embraced his theories about the 2020 election generally lose in competitive races. So the more he is the face of the Republican Party, is probably not good for the Republican Party. I can't tell you that it's a guarantee he'd lose, but odds are all we have seen is that this is not the best foot forward, the best face for the Republican Party. And so if he is front and center, this trial keeps him front and center. It may help him in the Republican primary, but probably not in the general election.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the way I see it as well. But it's going to be interesting to watch how this plays out, and how media or how public opinion will sway or maybe not. Because right now, what was it? 60% think that it's the right direction on the indictment. We'll see where this takes us. I want to get your thoughts on moving over to Chicago. Because the big issue there, as I understand it, is public education. You've got the Chicago Teachers Union on one side backing Brandon Johnson. You've got Betsy DeVos and that crowd over on the other side backing this Paul Vallis. Any thoughts on the mayoral race?
Also crime. We can't discount crime in this election too. Vallis is endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, and Johnson is endorsed by the Chicago Teachers Union. So these two powerful unions. Both highly polarizing. I think neither one really has uniform support in Chicago, and I think probably both candidates are trying to argue that they're not beholden to a particular union and are going to put the interests of the city, first and foremost. And from what I can tell, I mean, I'm not on the ground in Chicago, but what polling I've seen is that Vallis has the edge. I think in the endorsements game, Johnson has some high-profile progressive endorsements. I think Vallis has a broader swath of endorsements, because he has Fraternal Order of Police. He also has Bobby Rush, the Democratic congressman who was a former Black Panther. So there's a wider ideological range there for Vallis. And I think on the money edge, I think Vallis has the edge there too. So if I'm prognosticating, I think Vallis has the edge here, but of course it is close enough. And you can't know if that the youthful base of Johnson, the progressive base of Johnson, are those folks going to show up and outdo what the polls indicated, what the money race might indicate. So it's certainly a too close to call situation. But objectively speaking, I think Vallis has the edge here. And that's probably more to do with the crime issue than the education issue.
Yeah, that was my second. That was where I was going next. You jumped right over top of that because I was going to go with the difference between on the education front. Because clearly you've got Vallis, who's going to, I believe, be a charter school kind of privatization kind of guy that I don't think has worked well in a lot of places. But there is the crime issue. You listen to some of the messaging coming out, and you think Chicago's on fire all the time.
Well, and Johnson, here's someone who said, in the wake of George Floyd, that defund the police is not just a slogan; it's an actual political goal. He's walked that back, and this is my point. Johnson seems to recognize that that's not the place you need to be in, even in a Democratic city like Chicago. And keep in mind, we've had many Democratic mayoral races since George Floyd, and the candidate that's been more closer to the pro-police side of things has generally done better than a candidate that's closer to the defund the police side of things.
Yep.
This is true in Buffalo, in San Francisco, in Minneapolis, in Seattle. We've had in New York City, first and foremost. So Chicago seems to be in that same place. They rather see somebody taking crime seriously than trying to shift funds away from the police, even though, it's Chicago. This is a place where police have not been everybody's best friend in Chicago. So it is a fascinating example, and so I wouldn't go as far as to say that there's a uniform opinion about the police there, but it does seem that push comes to shove, a slight majority wants to see the police be funded, not defunded, and even Johnson is trying to calibrate his message to acknowledge that and say, hey, I'm not trying to defund. He said the other day, I won't cut their budget by 1 penny. But he wants to say he'll be tougher and smarter, that he'll route more resources to mental health issues, have police focus on violent crime. He's hoping to walk the line there. And if he does win, I think this is the key point here. If Johnson does win, I don't think it's a validation of defund the police. It's a validation of Johnson being very nuanced and backing away from that position to say, hey, even if you want to crack down crime, I'm still your guy.
No, I thought the whole defund the police thing was stupid from the beginning. I said from the beginning, I support the police when they're not wrong. We should give them the resources they need so that they can do their jobs, and I support them when they're not wrong. When they're wrong, you got to hold them accountable, and I think that's where everyone should be. I think this whole idea that we're going to defund and destroy and dismantle, idiotic. Just my thoughts. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Bill Scheer. Bill's a political writer over at the Washington Monthly. We'll get links out on social media. You can look at the work that he does. Lastly, I wanted to get your thoughts on what's going on in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin could be a huge, as Wisconsin went in 2011 with all of the Act 10 stuff and all the attacks on labor and on, just government in general. This could be a place where we turn some of that around, I think. And this Supreme Court seat might be part of that. I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, I'm certainly hopeful. Money isn't everything. It's not always the case that the candidate with the most money wins. But in a down ballot race that doesn't always get a lot of attention, money certainly can be a bigger factor. And it's notable that the Democratic candidate, the more progressive candidate, is winning the money race, does have more advertisements on the air. And historically speaking, Republicans have been more focused on these down ballot races than Democrats are. It's been a frustration for some Democrats. You're not investing in the state legislative races. You're not investing in the state judicial races. We're getting our clocks clean cycle after cycle. And now in this race, you've seen Democrats really energized about this. And Republicans seem more conflicted because, yeah, the Trumpers want the election deniers everywhere. You know, they want to take over the judiciaries and try to win these election battles. That's not a uniform position amongst Republicans. There's definitely it may not be a majority faction, but some faction, and probably to some degree in the donor faction, that says, you know what, that's not really where I want to put my money. That's not really what's most important to me. So you haven't seen the same kind of energy and coordination on the conservative side around winning this race than you're seeing on the progressive side, which is unusual for a down ballot race. Well, that mean is that going to answer who's going to win? I can't say it definitively, but it's certainly a hopeful sign for Democrats going into Tuesday.
I'm anxious to see what happens in the Supreme Court. There's also a Senate seat up, a state Senate seat up that could give Republicans supermajority status, which could override the governor, and also maybe throw some elected Democrats out. How do you see that race going?
I mean, I don't know enough about that particular district to be able to give you a really strong sense of which way it's going to tip. But certainly, if there is more turnout happening on the Democratic side because of the statewide race, that might have some spillover effect into the state Senate race.
Well, we'll see how that plays out. But Bill, as always, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. Good stuff.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
You as well, our good friend Bill Scheer. Make sure you check out the work that he does. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So President Biden was out on the road today. And look, this is important stuff. Getting the president out on the road talking about the bills that they've gotten through, the investments that they're doing. He tweeted out, "We're building a future where you won't have to leave your hometown to find a good job you can raise a family on. It's all part of my agenda to invest in America, American jobs, and innovation. Pride in our country," he says. Dignity for workers and their families. The president was at the Cummins facility in Friedley, Minnesota, and discussing how his economic agenda has led really to the strong job growth, and the idea that, look, we're investing in manufacturing, something we haven't done in decades. But he was at this facility, the Cummins Power Generation facility. The visit was part of the tour that he started last week, the Investing in America tour, promoting the fact that his economic agenda is working. We are creating jobs, and those jobs are good family-sustaining jobs. Now, Cummins, they manufacture generators and other power generation equipment. They announced last October, if you remember, that they were going to start manufacturing these electrolyzers. I guess it's the first time in the history of the country we've done this, because I guess what it does is it takes clean hydrogen, is what they're saying. I don't know, but they're taking hydrogen and they're using it for to create energy, to produce hydrogen fuel, another energy supply. We'll see where this goes. He does point out that there's been more than $2 billion in private sector investment into Minnesota because of what the administration has done. They've also pointed out that there's been, now again, this is the green energy stuff. Remember, you got the XL Energy plant there, which is a $575 million, 450 megawatt solar project. You've got another solar panel construction as well going on. Bobcat's got some new assembly going on. There's some manufacturing, some jobs coming back. Also, he points out that there are 182 infrastructure projects across the state, $2.7 billion in federal funding. Now, here's the thing. This is where I go, we need to be doing more of this. Last week they were out. They need to be out every day. They need to be front and center and doing these stops, talking about all of the manufacturing that's coming back because of our policies. Because if you listen to Republicans, the economy's terrible, everything's horrible, the sky's falling, we're all going to be out of the street corner with pencils, tin cups and pencils begging. When the reality is we've got decades of cleaning up to do, decades of bad policy. And look, Biden was part of that bad policy. The fact that he's the guy who said, it didn't work and we're turning the corner, important. But I don't ignore the fact that he was part of a lot of this stuff. This is where Republicans go, wow, Joe Biden did this. Okay, he's now undoing it. That's the important part. We're now moving in a direction to start reshoring some of our supply chains. And the pandemic had a big part of this. I've been talking about reshoring manufacturing for the last 18 years. Saying, look, we need to have jobs for working people. And this is where I go back to the conversation about automation. I don't want these factories to come back and all we get is the pollution and not the jobs that come with it, where we end up having these huge warehouses where it's all done by robots. I want people to have good jobs, good union jobs with good health care and good retirement security. Now, I have got friends who are like, well, those days are gone, Rick. This is the new era. Big tech is going to control everything. And that may be. And this is where we as working people have to be, reaching out to our elected officials and getting them on this issue. All they keep hearing about and all they keep getting, suckered into is all of this other stuff. All this stuff that doesn't mean anything and how you put food on the table. We need to get them moving in a direction that's doing the things that need to get done. And if we're not going to slow down the AI, if we're not going to look, I've said I'm not against automated trucks on the road, but every person who's in the industry should be red circled and they should be paid their salary throughout the remainder of their careers. Yes, we're going to make it more expensive to move over to tech stuff. Yes, but it's not going to be done on the chins of working people. You're going to make those folks whole. We want innovation. We want advancement. But it's not going to be at the expense of working families. It's not going to be at the expense of you and me and the people who get up every day and are told if you work hard, play by the rules, you'll get ahead, only to find out that they're getting kicked in the teeth day after day. This is where we need a political system of us taking control of it. Instead of being fed this outrage candy and this stuff that's meant to tear us apart. So for me, we've got a lot of work to do. Quite frankly, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And the sooner we get around to it, I think the better off we're going to be. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back with our good friend Bob Ney. Stick around. Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1968. That was the night that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his now famous "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech at the Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee. He was speaking in support of striking sanitation workers who were members of AFSCME Local 1733. During his speech, he said, "Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't really matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountaintop, and I've looked over, and I've been to the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." The next day, Dr. King was murdered by an assassin's bullet at the Lorraine Motel. In 2015, AFSCME President Lee Saunders wrote about the importance of remembering Dr. King's legacy to today's labor movement. Let's honor Dr. King by taking a page out of his playbook. Let's give workers the power to reshape our struggling economy and improve the lives of all Americans by negotiating better wages and benefits. Yes, unions are still the answer, the path to the middle class, for every American and not just African Americans. We follow Dr. King's path. We pursue his dream by organizing. It is the way forward for our union and the nation. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
With new outrages erupting every day, I find some comfort in knowing that we the people have at least eliminated certain particularly ugly plutocratic abuses. Child labor, for example. Well, outlawed, yes. Stopped, no. Recent reports reveal that thousands of children ages 12 to 17 are toiling illegally at dangerous jobs in manufacturing, construction, food processing, etc. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with teenagers working. They might need to help their families, gain experience, or just earn a few bucks. Indeed, I worked part-time throughout my high school and college years, and while I did gripe some, overall, it was positive. So this is not about children working. It's about corporate child abuse, plain and simple. For example, last year, Packers Sanitation Services was caught, quote, employing oppressive child labor in meatpacking plants to clean saws, head splitters, and other butchering machines. In a typical incident, one 13-year-old was badly burned by the caustic cleaning chemicals they used during long night shifts, which ran from 11 p.m. to at least 5 a.m. Once caught, top executives of Packers Sanitation tried to sanitize their reputation by proclaiming that they have, quote, zero tolerance for any violation of child labor laws. Oh? Ask that 13-year-old. Yet, our worker protection laws are so weak that Packers' multiple violations resulted in a fine of $1.5 million. That's not even peanuts for this nationwide giant, which is owned by Blackstone, a Wall Street huckster whose executives pretend they know nothing about the children they endanger for profit. This is Jim Hightower saying, how about we make a few of the children and grandchildren of Blackstone profiteers work some midnight shifts cleaning meat-cutting machinery? I'm guessing they would stop the abuse overnight.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So looking forward to Tuesday. Going to see what happens in New York. And I know there's a lot of chatter of who knows. You've got Marjorie Three Names down there who's claiming that the mayor has threatened her. And again, just trying to stir up the chaos. But here to share some thoughts on maybe how tomorrow's going to go. Because again, unprecedented. I've asked my good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So what do we think is going to happen tomorrow? Are we expecting a lot of people? Are we expecting, rocks thrown? Will Trump punch a cop, as Lindsey Graham said to do?
No, I don't think he will. You're not going to see. I can't imagine where Trump will look dejected, or where he's like down, etc. I think you'll probably see a smiling Trump, waving, etc. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene will get some attention because she's Marjorie Taylor Greene. But in general, I just don't believe there'll be violence. There can be violence anywhere, anytime. Anytime there's a protest, I just don't think you're going to see it.
Yeah.
The reaction right now by a lot of people is like, okay,
I think a lot of people are in the place that I'm in, which is, I want to see what the indictment is. I want to see what he's being charged with. Okay, let's see. There are 34 felonies. There's one charge of hushing up a porn star. How is it? How'd you get to 34 felonies? That's what I want to see.
Well, now I can tell you a little bit about that. Although this is not the Fed, but my lawyers told me at the time, because at one point in time I was going to go to trial, I hired former DOJ people, because that's what you do. You hire people that used to prosecute people, right? And then they commented to me on what they thought that that the government case would be weak because of other people like Tom DeLay, et cetera, that weren't charged, and they reviewed all that. And then they said, look, if you go into court, of course, I needed $3.2 million. But if I went into court, into a trial, they said, my lawyers told me I would be charged with about 65 counts.
Wow.
I pled to do 65, and I'm like, what are those? And then my lawyers start spitting out things, the way you look, the way you breathe, the way when the government goes at Blagojevich, remember? What did he have? 60-some counts, I think.
Yeah, it was obscene.
So anytime this happens with basically anybody, from the Fed end at least, they go in for the throat kill, and then they hope what happened with Blagojevich. I think if I'm right, he might have had 64 counts. I forget. He beat all of them. Mistrial, then he beat all of them except one. And then when the one count came, he got 14 years. So that's what I think the prosecutors do, everything under the sun that they can do. So that's why I think you're going to see so many of them. And then there'll be misdemeanors, here. Judge himself ruled no TV cameras.
Yeah, which I got to tell you, I think is wrong. I think this is something that we need to see.
Right. I am shocked that he ruled that there would be no cameras, in the courtroom. Now, I know this is going to be difficult. Trump's own lawyer was upset about, some of the things he was saying about the prosecutor. They're going to do what I thought they would do. They're going to try to get a change of venue. In my case, for example, we were going to try to go to Ohio, and the government didn't want us in Ohio. There were reasons we wanted to go to Ohio,
sure.
Obviously. Government didn't want us in Ohio. They wanted us in D.C. Trump's case, he's going to argue, he can't get a fair trial. And he said he has said all these things, about the judge, about the judge hates him, about the prosecutor. So normally people can say things, and it's like, oh, okay, but this, one thing, Rick, I think we have to all keep in mind, and it goes to your point about the cameras. This is unique. They should allow cameras, particularly in this case in the courtroom, because for either side, it's a precedent setting. It's not like you want to keep it hush hush. What happened? They're going to report on it anyway, right? But as far as what Trump's going to argue, this is again quite a unique case. I mean, if I was his lawyer, I'd argue that he can't get a fair trial there. Of course, I'd make that argument.
Yeah, I'd make the argument he can't get a fair trial anywhere.
Oh, that's true. Like I said, jury selection. Who did you vote for? Have you or your cousins or your cousins' neighbors ever contributed, to Joe Biden or the Democrat Party?
Yeah,
There's going to be all kinds of things.
And the other side, you own a MAGA hat, because again, maybe the best outcome is you get a MAGA jury, and if your evidence is there, maybe that's the only way they could convict. But then again, look, with where we're at, I don't. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, what I do find interesting is no mugshot. I was expecting like a Tom DeLay kind of mugshot, but evidently no mugshot.
Well, they're going to take a mugshot. There's going to be a standard photo. I just don't think they're going to release it.
All right, because the report I saw said, yep, no mugshot, no handcuffs, no jail, none of that.
Well, no, none of that. But I saw a report of no mugshot. I saw that, but I think, I could be extremely wrong, there's going to be a mugshot. It just won't be particularly made public. Now, the handcuff thing, and I think I said this on your show last week, I asked my lawyers, about the handcuffs because in the Casino Jack movie, they show me coming out of my office in handcuffs, which never happened. And I asked my lawyers, how come I'm not getting handcuffed? And they said, well, the government's worried it would get you some sympathy. I'm like, really? And they go, yeah, they're not going to put you in a jumpsuit and they're not going to handcuff you. And when I was taken down to the District of Columbia and then eventually to the Justice Department, when I was taken to District of Columbia, they had, I was never put around other people. When I was in the federal courtroom, I was not put, when I was fingerprinted and things, I wasn't put around other people. That did not happen. I think they worry, you get hurt, and then, of course, somebody looks into that and what happened. So that's the process. Now, the judge can say, give me your passport. I highly doubt he does that. So there'll be some routine things, Rick, and some non-routine things.
Yeah, because this is
Obviously,
not routine.
Secret Service is there.
This is not routine. I mean,
right.
You don't go, don't go indicting a former president very often. So groundbreaking. We'll see. Again, I'm interested to see what happens, especially with Marjorie Three Names there stirring up trouble. Did you see her interview on 60 Minutes?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you didn't miss anything. Neither did many other people.
I didn't. No, I didn't see it. I didn't actually even know about it. And I keep pace with things that one I didn't know about.
Yeah, Leslie Stahl did that.
If I was Trump's lawyer, I probably wouldn't want her there because we have to remember something. Trump's lawyer is a lawyer, and I'm sure he doesn't want her there. But there's nothing you can't tell her to stay away. She wants the publicity of being there, and probably will throw a fundraiser because she's supporting Donald Trump. Send me some money.
No, that's the key through all of this. Send me money.
Well, Trump raised $5 million this week
in the 48 hours after the indictment. Yep, and you knew that was going to happen.
Right.
I love the video though. I don't need your money. I can't be bought. But oh, by the way, send me money.
Right. Well, again, this is a process, and as I tell people that have asked me about it, it isn't routine. You're correct. But then there's the whole trial process where, there's appeals, and how long will this take? If you're Trump, do you want this to take longer, or do you want it to wrap up? I mean, which do you want?
I guess it depends on how much evidence they have.
Right.
I mean, if there's evidence, you might want to draw this out. If you think you can win this, you might want to get this out of the way so you can say, "Look, I'm the Teflon Don. They couldn't get me," and then set the tone for the other ones.
Right. I mean, the polls are showing that this is not helpful to him. But if he is acquitted, that sort of cements him on the Republican side. Because prior to this, and I made a prediction, never thought about this part happening, but he would not be in the convention as a candidate. And right before all of this happened, DeSantis was edging up in the polls. Trump was losing some steam. His big rally wasn't what they thought it would be, et cetera. And then this happened, and it changes, the dynamic.
Yeah, I see, because my mind is along with your friend Mustache. John Bolton said, "I'm not worried about Alvin Bragg hurting Donald Trump. I'm worried about Alvin Bragg benefiting Donald Trump. If Trump is acquitted or gets this case dismissed because it's not legally sufficient, that will be rocket fuel, because he can say, I told you this was a political prosecution," and I don't disagree with him.
Right, and then it also makes, and people will say, well, the courts don't act this way. Yes, they do. This would give a certain amount of chill to a prosecutor in Georgia, and I'll tell you why. Doesn't mean they won't indict in Georgia, but a prosecutor has to sit there and they have one thought in mind: can they win a case?
Yep.
You don't take a case against Donald Trump and you lose. You don't do that. So if he wins this, if he's acquitted, it's thrown out, mistrial, whatever happens, it has to have a bearing on the thinking in other cases, because the feds under Garland did not bring a case against Trump, on these issues. They didn't do it. Of course, they're a little gun shy from the John Edwards days, with the case.
Yeah, you remember when hush money was a crime in Republican eyes?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, John Edwards.
Remember that? Sean Hannity, this is a crime. Yeah.
Right.
I remember those days.
John Edwards was acquitted.
And look, the reality is I was even saying back then, John Edwards, what are you doing? Moron. And I wanted him to be president. Thank goodness he didn't get the nomination. I do want to get your thoughts on what's going on in Tennessee. I want to change gears a little bit, because this is as I predicted when they threw Marjorie Trainwreck off of her committee. This is now going to be standard operating procedure. It looks like the Republicans in Tennessee in the House, in the state House there, are kicking 3 Democrats off of their committees, and out completely, as it looks like, because they had the audacity to protest against gun violence in the House. Any thoughts on that?
Right. The Tennessee, they're beginning the expulsion process, is what they're doing for 3 Democrats, and it's going to, it's going to put the whole place into an upheaval. They introduced legislation to expel 3 Democrats for, quote, disorderly behavior. Now, that's after the 3 led protest chants for gun reform on the floor of the chamber, and that was in wake of the Covenant shooting. 3 of the Democrats went to the podium, and between bills, now they weren't recognized to speak, which is a breach of chamber rules. Okay, fine, it is. And with a bullhorn, the reps led protests in the gallery of the House, and chants calling for gun reform. Now, this is kind of interesting, because the House leadership, GOP leadership, said that their behavior was like insurrection, which
yeah, they're exactly the same.
Didn't mind in one case, they didn't mind. Now, here's the thing: the bottom line is, whoever they are, they've broke protocol. They shouldn't do that. There's rules in the U.S. House, for protocol, where if you say certain things, your words are taken down, which happened to John Micah from Florida, including Republicans voting to take his words down. There's certain protocol during sessions. So these 3 broke the protocol. Now, to expel them, they're not taking them out of the committee. They're trying to expel them.
Right.
And to expel them is like, somebody cusses at you and you try to give them life in prison without parole. I can't imagine how an expulsion will be approved by the legislature. I can't imagine. But I've said this, and you and I talked about this on your show. I was when the Democrats were controlling the House and were throwing people off committees, and for this and for that. Then the Republicans did it, for this and for that. Now the state legislature is doing it because they violated the rules of the House. And again, this is like a death sentence they're trying to institute on these three. They shouldn't have done it. They should, take their words down or condemn them for what they did or, fine them if they have a fine process or something. But my goodness, to expel them? That's ridiculous.
But this was predictable. And look, I hate to go back to that day, back then when the Democrats were going, and look, there was a reason to throw Marjorie Three Names off. You just don't do it. And as I said before, I wanted her on those committees so you could turn to her and go, we need more education funding. There she is, Exhibit A. But you knew this was going to get to the end of this road, which is, there's no shame on a lot of these with a lot of these folks, and you knew this was what was going to come. Right.
And then in Tennessee, they stripped them of their garage pass.
Yeah.
The badge to the building was cut off, and I think one of the members has a scooter. He has a mobility issue or something. I don't know. But anyway, that was inside the building, and he couldn't get it. And he needed to go home, or use it, and he was going to go home for the weekend. So when you see this, you're like, wow, just condemn them, have a vote, tell them about their behavior, et cetera. Now, the last time they expelled a sitting member was in 2016, and that was a 70-2 vote, by the way, in Tennessee to remove Representative Durham. He was a Republican, but that was for sexual misconduct. And that was the first expulsion since 1980 and only the second since the Civil War. So they would be expelling, almost history-setting expulsions for non-committal of a crime. These three didn't commit a crime. Might have been bad protocol.
No, it was a crime. It was a crime, Bob. It was a crime. They were talking bad about guns.
Yeah,
in Tennessee, if you talk bad about guns, that's a crime because remember the reason that they were screaming and hollering. They're loosening gun restrictions. You're going to do nothing over the fact that you've got more murdered children. You had those 3 9-year-olds being executed, and all we hear about is the shooter. And you go, well, wait a second. This is a great opportunity to start talking about red flag laws. This is the perfect case to start talking about that.
Well, red flag laws might as well be called green flag laws. You're 100% right. They have to start addressing, those issues. And red flag laws have to start being able to, be something that actually works.
Yeah. No,
and they need to dig into it.
Yeah, we'll see where this goes, but nothing good comes of this. Nothing good.
No.
Bob, as always, appreciate the time.
I don't think they'll expel them.
What was that?
I don't think they'll expel them.
Well, we'll see. Here. Well, this is again more fun and entertainment for tomorrow and the day after.
Exactly.
But as always, appreciate the time.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2008. At 8:48 in the morning, America Transair Flight 4586 touched down in Phoenix, Arizona. The flight had been delayed 2 hours before taking off in Honolulu. As the passengers departed the plane, few likely realized that they would be the last passengers ever to fly ATA. The company had filed bankruptcy and closed its doors. Thousands of passengers holding ATA tickets had to scramble unable to make new travel plans. More than 2,000 workers were out of a job. ATA had already filed bankruptcy 3 years earlier. They emerged from bankruptcy briefly when an expected contract to fly charter flights for military personnel fell through. The airline could not weather the storm. At its peak, ATA was the 10th largest airline in the United States. Its story was not unique, as many airlines went through bankruptcy since the dawn of the new century. The airlines have used actual bankruptcies and threatened bankruptcies to gain drastic concessions from their unionized workers. As part of the bankruptcy process, these airlines have laid off tens of thousands of employees, slashed pensions, and rolled back benefits. The mantra from management was that to get through these tough times, there would have to be shared sacrifice. Yet not everyone was asked to share in that sacrifice. In 2003, American Airlines threatened bankruptcy to win $1.8 billion in concessions on wages and benefits from the 3 labor unions representing Americans' workers. But while workers sacrificed, top management continued to enjoy millions in retention bonuses and golden parachutes. In total, between 2001 and 2010, nearly 200,000 airline workers lost their jobs, and workers made $12 billion in concessions on wages and benefits. Yet by 2011, the average U.S. airline CEO had seen their compensation soar to more than $3.5 million. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. No, I look at this Tennessee thing, and again, it's all over this this mass shooting. And again, I guess you have to give Tennessee Republicans credit that they're more interested in punishing Democrats and doing nothing than they are in actually fixing the problem. Look, they did come out and we're honest. We're not going to do anything because their mindset is, well, there are bad people out there. And even if you're in the mindset of, okay, well, more guns solve the problem. We should have armed guards at every school. Why don't we then? And this is the part that gets me. If this is what you believe, then why aren't you pushing for that? Why aren't we funding that? Why aren't we moving in that direction? Other than just going, oh, thoughts and prayers. I mean, we didn't even get the thoughts and prayers this time around. And the next time we won't. So, I mean, I see Ted Cruz losing his mind. And, you remember him when Uvalde happened? Oh, well, the school has too many doors and windows. We need one door, no windows. We're gonna lock our kids down into camps and surround them with barbed wire and armed guards. And that's the only way we can keep them safe, all because we don't want to deal with the real issue is. The real issue is the ease and the availability of weapons of war. And look, I'm not a gun grabber. I've said a million times, I've got one at arm's reach. This is not about that. This is about making sure that, in this case especially, that there are precautions in place, that we're checking who's got what. And I know that we have this strange idea that we have this unfettered right to every weapon. I actually had a conversation with a guy not too long ago who told me he believes there should be absolutely no gun control. And I'm going, no, we've got gun control. We've got gun control. It's just a matter of where we're drawing the line. You can't have a fully automatic weapon. You can't have, go down the list of other military armament. If the goal really was by the founders and the Supreme Court, to water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and patriots, we could have nuclear weapons. We could have, missiles, and we could have all this stuff if you could afford it. But we don't, because everyone just about believes in some type of gun control. It's a matter of where we draw the line. And just because somebody's inconvenienced, because we have to make sure that maybe you're not having a lot of problems, maybe you're not running from some protection of abuse order, maybe you're not doing some things, just because you're inconvenienced. Sorry, that doesn't mean that our kids should be locked down. But maybe it does. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally, especially the angry, evil ones. Those usually go to the top of the heap. Miss any portion of the program, make sure you download the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcasts, you'll find ours. And for the good folks in Santa Fe, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.